Good day, learners. This is your accounting teacher, Sir AJ, and welcome back to my channel. So, I would just like to thank all of you guys for supporting my channel. Sana ay may natututunan kayo from my accounting videos. Sa lahat ng mga hindi pa nakaka-subscribe, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell para updated ka kung meron tayong mga bagong video. So, for today, meron naman tayong bagong video and this is one financial accounting topic. Ito ay barkada ng mga PPE intangible. So for today, we will be discussing investment property. So if you want to learn how to account for investment property, then this video is for you. So tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, our topic for today is investment property. So, the standard that governs investment property is PAS 40. And according sa PAS 40, ang definition ng investment property is, it is a property but a land or a building or part of a building or both. So, land or building lang siya. Held by the owner or by the lessee under a finance lease to earn rentals or for capital appreciation or both, rather than for use in the production or supply of goods or services or for administrative purposes or for sale in the ordinary course of business. So ang purpose ng investment property ay to earn rentals or to appreciate its value, for capital appreciation. Hindi siya ginagamit for production or supply of goods or for admin purposes because if that is the case, PPE yan under PAS 16. Hindi rin siya for sale in the ordinary course of business because if that is the case, inventory naman yon under PAS 2. So these are some examples of investment property. We have land held for long-term capital appreciation. So nandyan yung land tapos itataas mo lang yung value niya, hindi mo siya ginagamit for production or for supply of goods. We also have land for undecided future use. You do not know what to use or how to use the land. Pasok din yan under the definition of investment property. We have building leased out under an operating lease. Kasi pag operating lease, the lessee is not to consider the asset in its financial statements. Kasi pag finance lease, although si lessor yung may-ari ng asset, the lessee will recognize the asset in its financial statements. So, building leased out under an operating lease. Number 4, vacant building held to be leased out under an operating lease. So, take note, the operative word, ang lease should be operating lease. And finally, property under construction as investment property. Ito naman yung mga hindi pasok sa definition ng investment property according to PAS 40. So we have property held for use in the production or supply of goods or services or for administrative purposes kasi yan ay to be governed by PAS 16. Hindi rin investment property ang property held for sale in the ordinary course of business or in the process of construction of development for such sale kasi yan ay inventory under PAS 2. Yung mga property being constructed or developed on behalf of third parties. So kunwari, nagko-construct ka ng building for another person that is under PFRS 15, you do not recognize the asset but you only recognize the revenues from the construction. And number 4, property leased out to another entity under a finance lease. Kasi if you are a lessor and then you lease out a property under a finance lease, i-derecognize mo yung asset kasi technically wala kang control over the asset at si lessee ang mag-recognize nun. That is in accordance with PFRS 16. Pero for property held under operating lease, sabi kanina, you can only recognize an investment property kapag lessee ka tapos under finance lease yung lease terms tapos pinaparenta mo rin sa iba under operating lease. A property interest that is held by a lessee under an operating lease, kasi pag operating lease, you do not recognize the asset. You only recognize expenses. But sabi dito, it may be classified and accounted for as investment property provided that you follow these rules. Number one, the rest of the definition of investment property is met. Ibig sabihin, yung purpose ng property is for rental or for capital appreciation, or is it land and or building, and the operating lease is accounted for as if it were a finance lease in accordance with PAS 17 or PFRS 16, the new standard. And then the lessee should use the fair value model set out in PAS 40 for the asset recognized. So, mamaya meron tayong dalawang models na i-discuss, but kapag pinili mong gawing investment property, yung property held under operating lease, then you need to use the fair value model. And an entity may make the foregoing classification on a property-by-property basis. We will discuss some issues concerning classification of investment properties. The first one is yung partial own use. Ibig sabihin, you have a building, for example, or you have a land, for example, tapos iba-iba yung purpose ng gamit nila. So, if the portions can be sold or list out separately, they are accounted for separately. So, ibig sabihin, yung mga pinaparent out mo is investment property, and then whatever you use for production or for admin purposes is to be recognized as PPE kapag can be separated. But if the portions cannot be sold or list out separately, the property is investment property only if the owner-occupied portion is insignificant. Meaning, kapag mas significant ang pagre-rent, then investment property. Pero pag mas significant ang pagiging owner-occupied niya, ibig sabihin for production or for rent, for production or for admin purposes, then PPE siya. Another issue sa classification ng investment property ay itong mga ancillary service. Anong mga ancillary services? Ito yung parang mga additional services that you give to the one who uses the property or the one who rents the property. So, ito yung mga services na ino-offer mo sa kanila. So, if those services are a relatively insignificant component, ibig sabihin parang hindi naman masyadong significant yung ancillary services of the arrangement as a whole. For example, the building owner supplies security services lang at maintenance services to the lessees, then the enterprise may treat the property as investment property. So take note, if the ancillary services are insignificant, parang hindi siya masyadong important kasi konti lang naman yung binibigay mong services, ancillary, then you can treat it as an investment property. But if the services are more significant, for example, in the case of a hotel, kasi may security, may maintenance, and all the other services, ancillary services that you give to the one who leases the property, then the property should be classified as owner-occupied. So yung mga hotel, normally sila ay PPE kasi yung ancillary services ay significant. Next issue is yung mga intercompany rentals. Ibig sabihin, pinaparent mo yung property sa iyong mga subsidiary or sa iyong parent, no? So, intercompany rentals are not investment property in the consolidated financial statements. Kasi, when you say consolidated financial statements, the financial statement of both companies will be consolidated. So, yun yung kay lessor at kay lessee. So, since intercompany to, it's as if parang hindi mo naman pinarent. Kasi pag consolidated FS, you are considered as one company, no? So, if in the consolidated financial statements, they are not investment property because the property is owner-occupied from the perspective of the group. However, such property could qualify as investment property in the separate FS of the lessor if the definition of investment property is otherwise met. So sa separate FS, pwede silang gawing investment property. Pero sa consolidated FS, they are not investment property because in the perspective of the group, hindi sila for rentals. So yun yung mga issues regarding classification ng investment property. We have partial use, we have ancillary services, we have intercompany rentals. So now, let's have an example. So ABC Company and its subsidiaries provided the following properties owned by the group. So this is a group financial statement. Land held for undetermined use, 1 million. Vacant building to be leased out under an operating lease, 2 million pesos. Property held for use in production, 4 million. Property held by a subsidiary, a real estate firm, in the ordinary course of business, 3 million. Building owned by subsidiary and for which the subsidiary provides security and maintenance services to the lessees, 2,500,000. Land lease to a subsidiary under an operating lease, 1,500,000. Land lease to a subsidiary under a finance lease, 2 million pesos. Equipment leased out under an operating lease, 500,000 pesos. And building under construction for use as investment property, 3,500,000. The question is, in the consolidated, take note, in the consolidated statement of financial position of ABC Company and its subsidiaries, what total amount should be reported as investment property? So, alin dun sa list ang mga pwede lang i-report as investment property? Una, yung land held for undetermined use, that's 1 million. Second, yung vacant building to be leased out under an operating lease, 2 million pesos. Also, as investment property, yung building owned by subsidiary and for which the subsidiary provides security and maintenance services to the lessees. Hindi to intercompany kasi yung lessee ibang tao. Tapos take note that the security and maintenance services, they are ancillary service, but for this one, they are not significant. So, pag not significant, investment property yan. That's 2,500,000. And finally, yung building under construction for use as investment property, 3,500,000 for a total of 9 million pesos. So, ang total investment property sa consolidated statement of financial position ng ABC Company is 9 million pesos. So, let's take a look bakit hindi investment property yung mga iba. So, first, yung property held for use in production, that is PPE according sa PAS 16 kasi for use in production. Next, yung property held by a subsidiary which is a real estate firm in the ordinary course of business, 3 million. Dahil real estate firm siya, ordinary course of business niya ang mga property, yung pagsisell ng property, then it is considered to be as inventory in accordance with PAS 2. Land lease to a subsidiary under an operating lease. So the lessor is the parent, the lessee is the subsidiary. This is an intercompany rental and they are not included as investment property in the consolidated FS. But pag separate FS to ni lessor or ni parent, then pwede to maging investment property. Land lease to a subsidiary under a finance lease, 2 million. Again, this is an intercompany rental. So this is also not included as investment property in the consolidated financial statement. In the separate financial statement of the parent or the lessor, wala rin siyang asset doon kasi finance lease to. Pag finance lease, ide-derecognize ni lessor yung asset. At ang magre-recognize nun ay si lessee. And finally, equipment leased out under an operating lease. Although it is to be leased out under an operating lease, 500,000, hindi pa rin to investment property because investment property only includes land and building. So dahil equipment to, automatically dun yan sa property, plant, and equipment. Because if you notice, sa definition ng PPE, it is held for use in production, for administrative purposes, or for rentals. So if you think about it, sir, bakit for rentals siya? For rentals din yung investment property. That part of the definition is intended for other assets that are for rental na hindi land or building. So example, ito yung equipment. So, that is our example for the classification of investment property. Now, let's move on to the recognition criteria for investment property in accordance with PAS 40. So, investment property shall be recognized as an asset when and only when it is probable that the future economic benefits that are associated with the investment property will flow to the entity and the cost can be measured reliably. So this is very staple, no? So nakita na natin to sa ibang mga standards or sa ibang mga assets. This is the recognition criteria. Probable yung future economic benefits and yung cost can be measured reliably. Now, how do we initially measure investment property? They are measured initially at cost. And take note that yung cost, ang ibig sabihin natin dito is the purchase price plus any directly attributable expenditure. So directly attributable expenditure includes, example, professional fees for legal services, property transfer taxes, and other transaction costs. Property held, ito lang yung exception. Property held under an operating lease shall be measured initially using the principles contained in PAS 17 or PFRS 16. So kapag yung pinag-usapan natin kanina, yung property held under an operating lease, if you choose to recognize it as an investment property, you should use PAS 17 or PFRS 16 to initially measure it, which is the lower of the fair value and the present value of the minimum lease payments. So as to that, we will talk about that in another video, no, yung mga leases in the future. So, subsequently, we measure investment property using two models. The first model is the cost model, which is very similar sa PAS 16, which is the cost less accumulated depreciation, less accumulated impairment losses. But you have the other choice, which is the fair value model. Take note, this is not the same as the revaluation model. Iba ang fair value model sa revaluation model because under the fair value model, we recognize or we measure subsequently the investment property at fair value. Take note, wala nang depreciation at walang impairment na mangyayari. You just measure it at fair value. So, yan yung difference ng fair value model tsaka ng revaluation model. So, any gain or loss from changes in fair value shall be recognized in profit or loss. These are some other considerations that we need to take note for subsequent measurement. If during acquisition, it is not possible to determine fair value reliably on a continuing basis. So pag feeling mo, hindi mo naman ma-measure yung fair value reliably on a continuing basis, then the asset shall be measured using the cost model until disposal. Residual value shall be assumed to be zero. If an entity measures investment property at fair value, it shall continue to do so until disposal. So, pag pinili mo fair value model, dapat gawin mo yun until disposal. Even if readily available market data become less frequent or less readily available. If an entity elects to classify property held under an operating lease as an investment property, so yung diniscuss natin kanina, then it must select the fair value model for all of its investment property. And investment properties that meet the criteria as held for sale shall be measured in accordance with PFRS 5, which we will talk about in another video. And finally, change is permitted only yung sa models if this results in a more appropriate presentation. But take note, PAS 40 notes that this is highly unlikely for a change from a fair value model to a cost model. Kasi nga pag nag-fair value model ka na, dapat gawin mo na until disposal. So parang mahirap mag-change from fair value model to cost model. So yun yung subsequent measurement ng investment property. Let's have an example for measurement of investment property. Investors Galore Incorporated, a listed company in Germany, ventured into the construction of a mega shopping mall in South Asia, which is rated as the largest shopping mall of Asia. For this purpose, it used the services of a real estate company to find an anchor tenant, a major international retail chain that then attracted other important retailers locally to rent space in the mega shopping mall. And within months of the completion of the construction, the shopping mall was fully rented out. So, pinaparent yung mall. The construction of the shopping mall was completed and the property was placed in service at the end of 2019. According to the company's engineering department, the computed total cost of the construction was 100 million pesos. An independent valuation expert was used by the company to fair value the shopping mall on an annual basis. According to the fair valuation expert, the fair values of the shopping mall at the end of 2019 and at each subsequent year and thereafter were 2019, 100 million, 2020, 120 million, 2021, 125 million, 2022, 115 million. The independent valuation expert was of the opinion that the useful life of the shopping mall was 10 years and its residual value was 10 million pesos. What would be the impact on the profit or loss account if the company decides to treat the shopping mall as an investment property under PAS 40? Letter A, using the fair value model, and letter B, using the cost model. So let's start with the fair value model. So under the fair value model, the initial cost is 100 million pesos. During 2019, the fair value is also 100 million. So walang gain, wala ring loss. But on 2020, the fair value is already 120 million. So there is gain of 20 million. So from 100 to 120 million, that's a gain of 20 million. On 2021, the fair value is now at 125 million. So, ang pinaka-recent niyang value ay 120 million. Para gawin mo siyang 125, then magkakaroon ka ng gain of 5 million on 2021. And on 2022, dahil bumaba yung value niya to 115 million, then from 125 million, ibababa mo to 115 million, then there is a loss of 10 million. Take note that under the fair value model, depreciation charges are not recognized. Sa cost model naman, the initial cost is still 100 million. The residual value is 10 million pesos. Then the depreciable cost is 90 million. The useful life is 10 years. Therefore, the depreciation per year is 9 million pesos. Ito ang pupunta sa profit or loss. And take note that fair value changes are not recognized under the cost model. So very, very easy. So that's the example for the measurement of investment property. Now let's go to our last topic, which is transfers and disposals. Take note that transfers to and from investment property shall be made when and only when there is a change of use. So, dapat merong pagbabago sa purpose ng property. Evidenced by commencement of owner occupation. Ibig sabihin, from investment property, gagawin mo na siyang PPE. Pwede ring commencement of development with a view to sale. So, gusto mo na siyang ibenta. So, from investment property to inventories. Pwede namang end of owner occupation. Hindi mo na siya gagamitin for production, ipaparent out mo na lang. So that's transfer from PPE to investment property. And meron tayong commencement of an operating lease to another party. So magsistart mo nang iparent na lang siya sa iba. So that's transfer from inventory or PPE to investment property. So for transfers to and from investment property, you should familiarize yourselves with this table so that magiging guided ka as to how to account for this transfers. So meron tayong 4 columns. Yung first column is yung saang galing account yung transfer, ano yung account niya before. Yung second column is ano yung magiging bago niyang use or bago niyang account. The third column is the initial measurement or what will be the measurement on the date of transfer. And finally, the fourth column is yung subsequent measurement or how do we measure it after the transfer. So, ang first natin is, kunwari, galing siyang investment property. Tapos, ita-transfer mo siya to property, plant, and equipment. So, at the date of transfer, you measure it at cost, which is the fair value or the carrying amount at the date of transfer. So, take note, dahil investment property siya dati, you can either use the cost model or the fair value model. If you use the fair value model, then whatever is the fair value at the date of transfer, yun na yung magiging cost ng magiging PPE mo. If you use the cost model, then whatever is the carrying amount at the date of transfer, then yun na ang magiging cost ng magiging PPE mo. Then, subsequently, you will measure it at cost or revaluation model in accordance with PAS 16 kasi nga PPE na siya. Our second example is yung investment property siya dati, ngayon gagawin siyang inventories. So at the date of transfer, initially, you measure it still at cost. Again, the cost is the fair value or the carrying amount at the date of transfer. Same concept nung sa first na transfer. But subsequently, dahil inventory siya, it shall be measured at lower of cost or net realizable value depending on PAS 2 for inventories. The third transfer is galing siyang PPE, so dati siyang PPE, magiging investment property siya. How do you initially measure it? Initially, you measure it at fair value. Any difference from the carrying amount, kasi di ba PPE siya, so whatever is the carrying amount, the difference from fair value shall be treated as revaluation. Ibig sabihin, kapag mas mataas yung fair value or meron kang ika-credit, then i-credit mo yon sa revaluation surplus. Pero pag mas mababa ang fair value, then there is a decrease in value. Saan mo i-debit? Depende. Pag meron kang existing na revaluation surplus, then i-debit mo ang revaluation surplus kung pwedeng i-zero out yung revaluation surplus. Pag wala ka namang revaluation surplus existing, then you debit it in loss. Subsequently, dahil investment property na siya, measure it at cost model or fair value model in accordance with PAS 40. The last is kapag dati siyang inventory and ngayon gusto mo siyang gawing investment property. Initially, at the date of transfer, measure it at fair value. But this time, any difference from the value of the inventory dati is to be recognized agad-agad in profit or loss. Dito kasi pag revaluation, 'di ba, pwede siyang mapunta sa OCI. But subsequently, you measure it at cost model or fair value model in accordance with PAS 40. So please familiarize yourselves with this table. Finally, for disposal, an investment property shall be derecognized on disposal or at the time that no benefit is expected from future use or disposal. Any gain or loss is determined as the difference between the net disposal proceeds and the carrying amount and is recognized in profit or loss. The same as sa PPE, the same as sa intangible assets. So, I think that would be all for today, and that's all for investment property in accordance with PAS 40. So now, it's your time to test your knowledge. So if you know the answers to these questions, then type in your answers sa comment section below. So ang question number 1 natin is, on July 1, 2019, EV company purchases an investment property at a cost of 50 million pesos, including transaction costs. On October 1, 2019, the fair value of the property increases to 52 million. At December 31, 2019, the fair value of the property is 51,500,000. The rental income received per quarter is 1 million pesos. The property has a useful life of 50 years. If the company uses the fair value model, what is the net effect on the profit or loss for the 6 months ended December 31, 2019 in relation to the investment property? A. 1 million pesos. B. 1,500,000 pesos. C. 2 million pesos. Or D. 3,500,000 pesos. For the second question, Honey Company has a plant asset with a carrying value of 1,200,000 pesos as of December 31, 2019. On January 1, 2020, the company decided to convert the plant asset to investment property. The fair value at date of conversion is 900,000 pesos. The conversion would result to A. 300,000 loss on conversion reported as other comprehensive income. B. 300,000 loss on conversion reported in profit or loss. C. 1,200,000 pesos increase in investment property. Or D. 900,000 pesos decrease in plant assets. Again, if you know the answer, comment your answer sa video na to. So that's all for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching and thank you very much for listening, and I hope that you learned something from our video today, and I hope that you learned the accounting for investment property in accordance with PAS 40. So again, if you like this video, comment, share, hit the like button, and please do subscribe to my channel for more accounting videos. So that would be all for today, guys. See you again in my next video. Bye!